I have this show.
Yes. Booming.
Well, maybe that's so all I, maybe I don't, maybe you're just introducing it. But I want to welcome Joey Chandler, a purpose coach who lives in San Rafael, with us on the show today. And Joey, what is a purpose coach?
Basically, well, thank you for having me on, of course.
Okay.
And basically, a purpose coach. The way I do it is I help people figure out who they are and what they're about, so they can make greater use of it in their life, whether it be in their family, their business, wherever they want. Politics. It's just my belief is that if we can figure out who we are and be more of that, we'll be more effective at doing whatever it is that we need to do.
Wow. You see, what really had me, wanting you in here was not necessarily to have a California Times episode with Guy Meyer, with Joey being a potential purpose coach for me on the air, but was really more that little discussion we had about our country and the Declaration of Independence. But I like the concept of, for me, for any human being, to kind of refining our sense of mission and purpose. And as we were just saying before we got on the air, was that I've just given notice at my work, and I'm a little bit taking some extra deep breaths and pondering, because I haven't really laid it out. I wasn't offered the big contract somewhere else.
Well, we could. I don't know if we want to make it a guy. We can do a purpose session, but the thing is, though, is that what we talked about is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. And the reason I've actually started talking about that is entirely purpose-based. Because you could say the purpose of our country is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. And like any company that we've all been a part of that lost its purpose or lost its why, that really driving force.
What did you say? Call it?
You just say it's your purpose. Some people refer to it as your why.
Your why.
Simon Sinek coined that term.
Yeah.
And for all of us that we've been a part of a company that has lost that. At some point, you start to experience people being frustrated, annoyed, and pointing fingers and blaming and short-term results and all of that kind of stuff. And I say that's very similar to what we're experiencing right now as a country. We said at the very beginning we're about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. We have done that in some places and really not done it in a whole lot of other places. And the ramifications of all of that is that we're in the situation where we have a lot of blaming, finger pointing, short-term fixes for very big problems. We're not able to communicate, just like a company that has lost its purpose.
Now, when you see that we have it in some ways and have lost it in other ways, to me it seems like a very primal. The essence for the individual is trying to find our own path of happiness, doing our best to achieve that, and then for this, but it's sort of a. There are many great philosophers who've pondered why humans beat their heads against the wall thinking happiness exists as something when it's something a little...
There's actually this really awesome TED Talk by a Professor Winterer, and I forget her first name, but it's Professor Winterer, and she actually explains how happiness for the founders, which was much more about a sense of we, and a public happiness rather than an individual happiness. The sense of an individual sense of happiness is actually a more newer phenomenon, and was not, when they said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they didn't mean for individuals. They meant as a collective. Because think about it, there were only 13 colonies. It's a very small part of a very big country. They were taking on the most powerful nation in the world. They couldn't do it as individuals. They had to be a collective. So they were operating an idea of a sense of we. And Professor Winter does this amazing job of explaining all of this and how happiness really was about we. And somewhere along the line, at some point, we started making it mean about me or about us and my happiness and my pursuit of liberty. And you can't do that. You can't take on life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all at an individual level. It has to be individual and collective.
In the transition of, in a lifetime, Now, my lifetime, let's say, was the paradigm that I grew up in. And talking to people different ages, that I find, like going back into the 1960s, when I was a kid, if I talked to somebody who graduated high school in 1963 compared to 1969, they were going through their youthful formation stage was different. They were, and for you, might have been the 1980s or yeah, a different paradigm that we kind of absorb that helps define what we're going for. It's what does this well, how do you think that, how would you prescribe us getting back to a sense of we again?
Yeah, you talk. The very first thing, if we were a company and you and I were consultants and we were going into a company and we're going to help them, get reconnected with their why, the first thing that we would do is we'd ask them, like, do you have it? Do you have a statement of what it is? And let's just assume they did. We would then go out and talk to the staff. Workers, different levels of workers, all, how is this showing up? How is this not? And we would just try to get an assessment of that. Now, our country, 300 plus million, it's a little harder to do. And we've been doing this for hundreds of years, so there's a lot of history.
It's always changed.
And it's always changed. But what we started doing is, and I honestly don't know, I was walking over here, I'm like, I have no idea what the answer will be of how to get it resolved. But I do know that the answer will be found in people talking about what life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all means to each other. And we start to explore it because it was a declaration of independence. It was we, it was together. And I think that sense of us declaring that we are about this as a people, as a country, has been lost.
We, in order to form a more perfect union.
Right.
And I think that frequently I think of that term in terms of that we are in our mission to be a union. We were really, look, let's lock arms and build this thing,
right,
and make it happen.
Well, the problem is that pretty much as soon as the ink dried, we stopped. we said we were about this, but then we, of course, didn't include certain people that looked a certain way. We didn't include women. There's all sorts of things that we did not, people that
we didn't have that.
We didn't include
this paradigm of the paradigm, I forget that word, but just this evolution of humanity, what we've gone through from, believing that as. I mean, it's staggering. Let's say women's voting only took place, 100 years ago.
Right.
That they passed the right to vote, and it took some 50 years or whatever for some of these states to finally ratify. And I was just looking at that, and I'm just thinking, it's staggering how.
Yeah.
And we get impatient, I think, with this world.
Well, this is where the I think the power of purpose really does come to play, because if you say you're about something, if a company says we're about something, if a country says we're about something, and you do things that are against that or somehow not living up to that, no matter if you have the best justifications, we couldn't do it and all sorts of things, those things are going to have ramifications after a while. You can't ignore who you are over time without it coming back to impact you in some way. And so while we had good reason, I'm not going to say I'm not going to say that I could go back there and I would have been able to make a better decision or anything like that, putting myself in those circumstances.
You talk about 1776?
Yeah.
What, to add a few different words? Or to
but the idea, but they said we're about this, we're about life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. It was very much a we statement. I think we is mentioned 11 times in the Declaration of Independence. It's very, it was a collective thing. But for them, they justified not including all sorts of other people for all sorts of different reasons. And that, at some point, will start to has an impact, and it has had an impact on our country. When you have your purpose, you can take actions that are against your purpose, and you may see a short-term gain and a boost. Maybe you make a bunch of money or something, but you do it in a way that is antithetical to you. At some point, that's going to come back to get you.
Well, they had their sense of we was prescribed by this. What would you say? by adjectives like provincial or someone nowadays might just say flat out racist. But they had a view of somebody so different is must be, they're not even part of the equation. And after all, they weren't even letting their wives vote.
Yeah, there's also.
So it's like, how did we emerge out of this? And you can look at, cultures of the Middle East and look at their attitudes toward women, and you can see that there's all of humanity has a lot of evolving to go. God willing, we had time to keep evolving this ship, and hopefully we do. But we have to. So
right. But the difference is, we said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and I keep adding for all. And I just want to be clear, that's not in the Declaration, but the sense of we very much is. And since the individualists have kind of co-opted all those we's, I keep adding for all, just to bring that to remind myself and others. We said that. We didn't. It wasn't forced upon us. No one said you have to do this. We said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. And once we said that, we set in motion. You could say it set in motion the growth that we have seen, but it also set in motion our responsibility as a country to honor that for all part, that we part. And there's places where we have, and there's places where we haven't. And what's coming back to bite us now are all the places where we haven't. And all of that angst and frustration that we're feeling, like, our country's being attacked, or there's a lot of there's a lot of divisiveness in the country. Well, that's really only for white guys. If you think about it, if you were not a white guy, and you were a person of color, you're a woman, you haven't, like you said, you haven't had the right to vote. It hasn't been safe to be you in lots of different places. And now all this tension that we're feeling, people have been feeling that for hundreds of years. And now we're just kind of feeling it. We're like, whoa!
Right.
But it's been there.
Well, that's I ponder that too, because I think of it in terms of what does it mean to have that strong feeling of being in the in crowd, shall we say, not being an outsider in your community. For a lot of people who are a newcomer to move into a new place in their world, and it might take a while for them to gradually feel like, yes, this is my home, this is my community, this is where I belong. And that divisive element that I think everybody is perceiving or breathing in, the anxiety, leaves people, questioning, what do I belong? Is there something inclusive that is a safe zone that for all of us at this point in time? So maybe as your point is that white men are feeling that threat of being just seen as an outsider as well, and
it's the first time. It's essentially the first time we've ever really felt it, and it sucks. I mean, let's just be honest. It's really awful. It feels bad, but then when you start to think about, like, wow, people have been feeling this way in our country, who we said about life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all. That's what we said, but lots of people have been feeling something very, very similar to this for a very long time. And what it makes you just start to think is like, okay, we have told this wonderful story about our country. And again, some of this is probably true, but there's a lot of places where we need to go to work. And we need to start having conversations. And I say the place to start is simply by talking to people about what life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all actually means. Because we have no idea. I mean, we talk about the Constitution. We all know different amendments of the Constitution. But very, very few people have actually gone through and read the Declaration and have it be like, no, I declared part, myself, I'm part of that Declaration. We don't operate that way.
Well, I think that we're caught up with this pursuit of happiness. It's almost like we're chasing something that we're destroying at the same time, and the chasing of it is part of the not seeing it. I kind of try to frame, or maybe I don't even try, maybe that's the way I see it. I see the whole planet as sort of the issue being sort of a biological consciousness to life itself, that we are blind to this gift of life, of this biological life that we are a part of. We're not here unless we're, to me, continually embracing or trying to create our doom even faster than than it seems to be actually going. If we don't have that knowledge or sense that we are just, I mean, we have to be humble in this fantastic gift that we're living in, right?
Yep.
You know, happiness, as we mentioned a week ago when I met you briefly, I think, you're not going to be happy in your community stepping over people who don't have a place to sleep at night. Particularly if you've been living long enough around here, and you know it makes it even harder. It might be not quite so bad if you just didn't even know what their names were. But it's horrible to be in this situation today. And then, like, you know, what we're witnessing with with Australia a month ago or whatever, I couldn't even read the stories. I didn't even want to look at it. And reflecting lately on this song from the 1980s, when you were just a kid, you might not even have heard it back then, maybe you heard it since, was by this Australian band, I don't know if it's ironic or not, called Midnight Oil. Of course. You know, how can you sleep when your beds are burning?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's sort of where I'm at today, and I'm at that a lot. I feel like with my conscience and my no longer a young person, and I get up at 3 in the morning and I can't stop my mind from thinking about 100 things, and I want to have this sense of purpose and mission and you know all that stuff, and even internalize guilt, which is not like a big surprise. I mean, it's like, yeah, there's so much stuff that I look, oh God, you know, now I'm this age and I, you know, things. So that happiness thing is it's there's really nothing at all in life that we crave or want, or maybe.
Well, the interesting part is I work with people a lot on their purpose, and what comes up, some people are about happiness. Some people want happiness, but other people don't. Like myself, I'm about people being great. If you talk to me about happiness, it doesn't land for me like in my gut.
All right.
Some people are about happiness.
Well,
some people are about joy.
Great. And happiness does seem great.
And the people,
being great, is great.
And the interesting part is the people who say they're about joy is like, isn't everybody about joy? And, you know, and happiness. Right. So the interesting part is which part of the founders were about happiness? Who in that group had idea of bringing happiness to them? Because one of them, or some group of them, must have been about happiness personally, to bring that into the conversation, because they wouldn't have done it had it not. You know,
it's such a rebellious notion.
It is.
It's just,
so the thing that is missing, though, and I'm going to say is missing in your conversation, or it could be added, let's just say, is a sense of we. We're very much in this sense of individual pursuit of happiness, and we don't have a sense of this collective, like, what can we do? And it's hard because you think like I'll take care of myself first, then I can help other people. And unfortunately, this doesn't work. There has to be a little bit of back and forth. You have to look at like, okay, what would make me happy when I wake up this morning? You know, what can I do to generate happiness for myself? And then what can I do to generate happiness for other people? And you go back and forth. And what's been missing in our country for a whole slew of reasons is the sense of this collective we. And honestly, like so I interviewed 25 white men who had gone through, self-selected, had gone through anti-racism training. You know, these were men that were trained in all sorts of different, they were coaches and leaders and consultants and all sorts of different things. But I put a note out to Facebook and LinkedIn saying, I'm looking for these types of folks, and I got 25 of them. It took me a while, but I found 25. And the most interesting thing about all of this is that they said that after doing the training, some of the benefits that they experienced were a greater sense of lightness and freedom. And the word that came up over and over again was a greater sense of humanity. And so what I think, and what that says to me is that the racism that's in our country that has, has been there for, and that we're just, that either, although you and I are not on the receiving end of that so much, just being a part of a society where that's so prevalent has an impact on us, has a weight on our shoulders that we don't even realize. And so when you and I go through and do our anti-racism training, and we look at like, where have I been racist and what friendships have I hindered, which I did and continue to do to this day, you start to lift that, you start to chip away at that weight. And because it's so prevalent, it comes up. And what you start to see is that one of the impacts of a society that has such high levels of racism is that it's very isolating. Because racism ultimately is a divider, right? This is me, that's you, or that sort of thing. And so when that happens over and over again, that naturally shows up in other relationships. That shows up. Men are not connected, and we don't have the conversations. And I'm not saying it's all because of racism, but it's part. And it's so prevalent, so in our lives, that it just gets in the way of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all.
Do you ever feel like that it's sort of to me, I sometimes feel like it's such an illusion that the sense of perceiving somebody and drawing a wall in front of them because of the race, it's like you're just simply not seeing a human being in a way. I mean, I'm not, actually, maybe I should. I am intrigued very much, and now I'm interrupting myself, and that's a typical
It's
a wonderful
well,
interviewing technique.
I'll just say this: it's challenging because it is so prevalent in our life. It's there in ways that we don't even know. And one very common thing is that when you start to see it, you just start to realize how common it is. And I think it's actually improving a bit, but I'm not going to say it's anywhere near where it should be. But there's just a sense, this never-ending, the water drops, the tick, tick, the 1,000 points of how it shows up over and over and over and over again. And when you start to get present to it, I know when I did in the past 2 or 3 years, it's like you're just like you feel this sense of weight, like you just like, how can people live like this? Because it's so constant. And then you start to work through it, and you start to say, you start to stand up. But
it's a wall, though, isn't it? Isn't it a wall, a psychic wall that needs to be sort of dissolved? And isn't a lot of it just that people don't associate with somebody, so they never, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I work in a wonderful situation, or I did work, of people from different cultures, and to me, I just think that one of the things that these people are missing is the pleasure of fun,
Yeah.
of having that. I don't know what, like it's like this carnival of personality and spirit and different elements that make people unique.
Yep.
It's a carnival. And then I was looking at pictures, reading a book, a very famous book that you've probably heard of, and maybe you've read, Ishi in Two Worlds, right? Now, you heard of that?
I haven't. But...
Oh, well, it's a fascinating book if you want to dig into, the white history that is just, makes your jaw drop. But it was about the last Native American that was found in California around the turn of the century, who had been living all by himself and living in his own little world and didn't want to come down, and finally just walked into civilization. He had been living for like 10 years all by himself way up in the mountains. And it's a fascinating story. They brought him down to Berkeley, and he living in two worlds, Ishi. But when I look at him, or when I look at Frederick Douglass, I look at these, these powerful people. To me, I can't see how anybody. It's like they got to get it. You're dealing with somebody who, speaking of great, you're looking at somebody who is a great human being. All our ideas or little constructs of fear, perhaps even, you know, that we don't want to give the possibility that that person in front of us is great, you know.
Well, I mean, yes, everybody has their own. We all have personal stuff to, but you also have to acknowledge, for however many hundreds of years now, our country has been doing the exact same thing. As by law, we've said life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all, and then we said it didn't apply to all these people. So the idea that you and I and all the people like us could grow up in this society and where we are making that, where those divisions were institutionalized and you know, there's systemic issues, to have that not impact us is near impossible.
Well, the impact is there, but what it seems like what we're to me, I find that there's a certain amount of, I feel it's like we're creating a very race-oriented fix that I see now, where white people must learn about black people, and, you know, it's like, I mean, you know, I may sit alone in this concept, but I really feel that the important thing is to melt, to merge, to be, and then I feel like it's sort of the biological thing. Overpopulation is and some people disagree with me. It creates stress. There is less for everybody. You know, America had a melting pot concept. I don't think that concept is over yet. I think it's still working. I think it's working gradually, but I think it's working actually in many ways not so gradually. I think it's working very fast too. I feel it's moving out in all directions. I think there's a much greater willingness to embrace another person just because they are that person. Maybe even more so because they're different from us. And I'll say embrace. I don't mean, you know, come, you know, be my friend because, you know, I don't know if that's what's needed. I think we all need to be our natural selves, but still see, and that goes back to me with the concept of left and right, black and white, left and right. It's like, let's put ourselves all in that circle. Let's live it in that way. Let's get back to that. Let's not be afraid of conservative people. Just the word conservative, you know.
Well, the parts you have to, when you take it a little bit of a bigger standpoint in a life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all kind of context, you realize we've always been divided. Like, if you're a black man growing up, pretty much any time before now or even now, like you don't have a sense of we're all together. You just don't. I mean, you know, just be real about it. You don't. And so if you put yourself in the idea of like, okay, our purpose is this. This is who we said we are. There's a lot of places where we haven't done it, but this is still who we are. How can we go about fostering this? And the first thing you start to do is you start to talk to people. And you know, some of the great questions is what gets in the way of you experiencing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all? What would allow you to be able to make that more available? And we just start to have the conversation. We're 300 million plus amazing people who, if we start to have the conversation, I don't know what is possible. I mean, I really don't know that answer, but I do know that something incredible could happen. And I also know that us going the way that we are isn't working so well.
That's for sure.
You know, I mean, I think we agree on that.
But actually, let's define that a little more. So make sure my brain.
Yep.
I mean, in its broadness, I can't really disagree with it, but I just want to get a little clearer what you were actually thinking about when you said that. You're thinking about on the social level. Are you thinking on the ecological level, or every level? Or?
I mean, so life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all is very American-centric. It's, you know, it's who we said we are. So, and obviously, the world has changed since then, and there's different things. But this is what I can get my head around right now. I can't imagine. I don't imagine us creating a purpose for the world without creating the purpose first for the country. Like, I don't see us being able to do that, or at least in my head. Maybe other people can, but I can't. And right now is you start to raise the conversation. Everybody you talk to, just ask them, what does life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all mean to you? Here's what it means to me. You have to do that your own thinking about that. It means to be able to do this. It means people knowing who they are and be able to express it in a way that leaves themselves and other people empowered. It means all of us working together to create happiness, because we can't have individual happiness. We've seen that doesn't work. It works for a little while, short-term gain, and now we're going through now we're kind of in a downhill, and it could get very ugly very fast. But and I'll be honest, it may be too late to have this conversation. Like, it may take more of a dramatic,
seems like
dictatorial.
Frequently, the way these days are,
right.
It's
so
very easy to be.
And I don't know, but the one thing I do know is when I work with people individually, or even work with companies, when you figure out their purpose, you realize that they've been living it much more than they think. Maybe not as much as they want, but much more than they think. And so they can tap into it faster and come up with ideas much faster than you would have anticipated, before they did that work. And so my thought is, if we could get a critical mass of people who, one, know their own purpose, because it's much easier to say we as a country are about life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all, when I can say I personally am about people being great, and when other people can say that. So if we get a critical mass of people who know their purpose and can be able to express it and are engaged in it, then we can have a critical mass of people who can say, okay, we're about life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all. What do we do about that? How can we make that more alive for people? How can we make it so that people understand that it's the declaration that we all declare it? Like, part of being born into America, you declared that it's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all. Those are kind of the rules. And if you're not into that, if you're into I'm life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for me, it's like, great, that's not America. You can go somewhere else. But that's, to me, how it goes. And the really interesting part is since I started having this conversation, I can talk with any, as far as I know, and maybe it doesn't apply to everybody I've talked to, far left, far right, any combination thereof, people are interested in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They're mostly interested in for themselves, and I say, well, it is about for everyone, and then we can start to have a conversation. And I find that I can have more engaging, more interesting, again, baby step sort of conversations than I was having before when we're talking about, well, who are you voting for?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a powerful. I think it's part of what I'm seeing in my sense of the circle concept too, and the sense of that to embrace that element of what makes us, and to see what makes us to feel great, to be with other great people. And how I might define the great people is people who aren't bogged down in fear, people who are willing to step back, maybe if they, with conversation, with openness, with their fears, and bring everybody, let people in to the conversation.
The other part I would add to that is, too, people that are aware of the larger systemic issues. Because you and I can't talk individually without talking, what's going on in the world. We can't talk about what's going on with us without thinking about, or the more we can think about the people who aren't at our table, who aren't represented in this conversation, the more powerful we are going to have a conversation about what we can do. So we also have to be able to think this is me, this is what I want, this is what you and I want, but also, how can we help other people? How can what we do benefit other people in trying to achieve what they want to achieve?
Now, I don't want to lose that arrow that you're just putting out there. I think we can, and I think it's, sometimes as things might get even darker than they are now in our world. Very likely, actually. But sometimes that becomes a force of bringing, light or action or positiveness comes forth because of that very fact. But the idea of your little training, kind of stepping back to that training, that did sound pretty fascinating. Because I've often thought that that the people who wear guns on their hips and who are servants, as peace officers could really use across the board some kind of like situation where beyond their just police training, they get the human training before they're even allowed to carry that badge. I mean, I'm jumping down to a different level of problems in the world, but
I mean, the answer is yes, and that applies for everybody. You know, I mean, think about it. We're born into a country that says we're about one thing, and we've for many years done something opposite. That's what we're born into, and so of course, and we feel like we can't be ourselves. You know, we're born in this world to share something. Whether you believe it's a spirit, a soul, an energy, just the way the brains are wired. There's something that we have to share with the world that we want to experience more of and that we want to share more of. And we come into this world, and of course, things don't go as well as you want when you're a kid, and at some point you start to decide, like, well, maybe there's something wrong with me because it seems like everyone else has got it all together, which of course they don't. And our parents, they don't have it together because they're still trying to figure it out. And the world that we're born into doesn't have it together and clearly does not foster a sense of knowing who you are. And so we start to make decisions about who do we have to become. And then we start to, change, we have new habits and we try to figure out new things and do things in different ways and take classes and workshops and seminars and all those kinds of things, all to try to become this thing who we think will be successful in this world. And the irony is the whole time we have this, this ache in our heart and our gut that doing all that basically says who I am is not enough. Who I am personally, I can't survive in this world as me. I got to be something else. And we end up with far more experience being who we think we should be rather than being who we are.
all right. So saying that again, we have far more experience in the world of thinking,
just life,
who we are rather than being who we are.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
You go to work, right? The vast majority of workplaces, are you really yourself at work?
Actually, it's been a pretty good situation for me. It's pretty silly that I'm leaving it, actually.
But most people, if you ask them, there's a sense of like, no, I can't be myself.
Yeah.
I have to be somebody else to produce the results that I have to at work.
Yeah. No, it's No, I've been lucky, and I feel that is exactly, you're right. And to be yourself is part of that whole notion of what everybody wants to be. They would like to be
themselves,
and that's freedom. When you have that, you're overcoming.
Well, it's also life.
Yeah.
It's being yourself.
Yeah.
Because that sense of deadness.
Yeah.
I mean, suicide is way up. Depression, isolation.
Oh, yeah.
Especially among men. All sorts of things. Yeah.
Well, what is it? So what you're pointing to, and what the world needs to point to, I think, if I could tell the world that this is what you need to do, not that I would know.
Millions of people all watching this that are like this.
Right.
Yes.
But we're looking for some kind of sense of where the heck are we going beyond down the tubes, and how do I engage, or how do I find this collective that's really building this, this what we really need, this element that we're kind of longing for, this connectivity. And here we're facing, and we're basically facing environmental doom and destruction here in this world. And the pursuit of happiness is, I was thinking, and I've said this on other shows, and it's sort of a theme sometimes, is we're kind of destroying ourselves with our looking for this, I would call sort of an irresponsible happiness, or maybe we just haven't had our eyes opened up to what our actions are doing, the way our lifestyle choices. And we might regret horribly the genocide that went on from coast to coast in this country. Many people who are the most upset about racism or this or that, but at what level are we willing to attempt to have a more peaceful and respectful relationship to nature? At what level do we acknowledge that here I am, I'm pumping gas, or even if I have an electric vehicle, do I know where that cobalt comes from that's going to power this battery? And all this, what level does this external I feel like we're too. Go ahead.
To me, we're not going to figure this out by ourselves.
Right.
And I would invite you, every time that you think of happiness, think about, am I thinking individual happiness, or am I thinking about happiness as a public?
Yeah.
Like, because I don't think we've actually thought about public happiness for very long.
Well, I think your point is so good, and actually it really goes into my brain too, because I do get very egocentric, and I and in my workplace, it's not been easy and everybody has their own powers and abilities and skills in terms of communication. And here I'm sitting with you as if I'm a good communicator, but maybe in reality I'm somebody who's just, I mean, not maybe, but who's stuck inside the brain of my life and finds it actually awkward or difficult to just, even people to really open the door to good communication at times. And I'm just
well, on that, so that as a purpose conversation, so we're all living our purpose, and there's always places we're bumping up against it. There's places where whatever your purpose is, let's just say happiness, because we've talked about that, if that's your purpose, there are places where you can be fully happy, you can be fully yourself, and you're great at helping yourself and other people. And there's places where you're not very good. You stumble. And that doesn't change. It does not change how you can be the most wise purpose person there is in the world. As far as I can tell, there's going to be places where you are living it, and there'll be places where you aren't. And so those places where you're feeling stuck, that you can't communicate with people, that's just you're bumping up against a limit. And then what there's to do is to figure out, who you are and what you're about, and how you can bring more of that to that particular situation. Maybe you can just acknowledge. One of the things I've done in the past year or so is just talk about how lonely guys are. When I meet guys, I talk about loneliness a lot, because what I found is a lot of people, even if I don't know them, we can talk about loneliness, and because so many guys feel it.
And I think so many women feel it too.
And so many women too.
And I think it's part of our.
It is. I'm being a little stereotypical, but for guys, it is a conversation that creates. That I found that creates connection. I haven't changed anything about myself or anything. I'm not particularly more of a better friend or not, but I'm able to connect with guys and kind of get a deeper level, because I'm willing to just say, hey, I've been thinking about loneliness a lot. I've been struggling with it. I hear other guys are. How's that show up for you? And not everybody, but a lot of guys are willing to talk. And that's just me recognizing where the limits of my ability to be great with people are, and trying to figure out how to expand that.
I'm here with Joey Chandler here. He's a purpose coach.
So I never can walk away with this, because my purpose process takes 2 questions. Do you want to go through it?
Oh, sure.
Sure.
Go for it.
So when you interact with people, how do you want them to feel?
Relaxed.
Relaxed. Okay, awesome. Anything else?
I guess there'd be a little bit of happiness in there. I mean, I'd like to see a smile.
Okay.
That would be awesome for me.
Yep.
Okay.
So relaxed and happy.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now our purpose, and we've talked about this, has been with us for a long time. Maybe it was there as part of a spirit, a soul, an energy. Maybe it's just the way your brains are wired. Maybe it was there before we were born or at birth, and I honestly have no idea. I don't know that answer. But I do know that no matter what, from any of those, it was there when we were young. So the first time we would have interacted with it, even if we didn't know exactly what it would have been when we were young.
Interacted with
our purpose.
With our purpose.
It would have been there in kind of the background of our lives. Really? We wouldn't have known what it was. But it would have been there, because if it's part of our spirit or soul energy, that was already there. It must have been there when we were young. So when you think of relaxed and happy, that feeling of being relaxed and happy, how would you describe that in language that you would have used when you were 10, 11, or 12?
I just have an image of the baseball diamond, and I don't know.
What's that feeling?
Yeah, or maybe when we toss the bat and put your hand out and you pick your team.
Yeah.
And that was a beautiful thing.
Absolutely.
In those days, made us
Absolutely.
boys so happy.
Yeah.
Get out there.
So would you say you're about people being happy?
Yeah.
Yes.
What was that?
Are you about people being happy?
I think so. As a matter of fact, I saw the Fabulous Fun Guy movie, and I thought, damn, that's me. Why am I not living this?
So here's the thing, and everybody watching this, and you can look, you'll see you smile.
And for the people out in the audience, I am so sleep deprived today, and this has not been an anomaly for this show.
So the idea is you're about people being happy. Now, there's places in your life where you have successfully been happy yourself, and you've helped other people be happy. And there's places where you've stumbled and you've struggled.
Right.
And I could add your job that we looked at. And how's your current job that you just left? How's that about creating happiness for people?
How is it?
Yeah.
It's super involved in that. But here I'm leaving it because I believe that, in essence, that I have this uncertainty or this dissatisfaction with working for the corporate fabric of existence. Right. And I keep feeling like that my whole mission, getting back to purpose again, is to awaken people to the power of independent and local things. When I say independent, I don't mean just all by myself thing, but something that, to me, it's almost like democracy. When a business or a store is actually has the creativity and the responsibility is all happening in that place by those people, as opposed to some somewhere far away who just wants to harness your good energy and then I don't know. I don't know how to be a successful rebel. That's my problem.
Well, can I give you some coaching on that?
Sure, please.
So you're about people being happy. And part of being happy for you sounds like creativity, connection, like working together, some sort of sustainability is part of it. And there's a few things. And what I help people do is come up with what I call your 5 pillars. And these are 5 things that define what your purpose means to you. Like for me, I'm about people being great. To me, that means knowing who you are, having a dream, getting after it, having fun with friends and family, and helping others. That's my definition of greatness. Okay. And so if you create your pillars, you do a little work and you figure out those 5, which doesn't take a lot, but you come up with those 5, and you'll start to see all these different ways that you can actually make those things happen in the world. And so now instead, when you go out there, you're like, I want, and you'll start to figure out what skills you have that help people be happy. See, one of my things, I help people really see their greatness in themselves, and I do that by purpose work. My purpose is not purpose work. My purpose is about people being great. And what I do, and what I'm very, very good at, is helping people see their greatness. And when you figure out who you are, then you can start to figure out what you're really good at to allow for that to happen. And then you can go to businesses or wherever it is and say, I am really good at this sort of thing. Or is people being happy interested because I can help you, or interesting to you?
I think that's great, because I like what you're saying, and I think the people who know me at work know that I kind of live for a moment of sharing a smile, or and to me that's one of the most greatest things in the world.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? And the reason all this exists is because I used to do videos where I would get 30 or 40 or 50 people all saying something about a person. Like we're going to do a video for, say, your mom. We get 30 or 40 or 50 people that all say something nice about what they love and appreciate about your mom, put them together in a video and show it at a birthday party or an anniversary. Oh, wow. So if I interviewed 30 or 40 or 50 of your best people, asked what they loved and appreciate about you, happiness would be in the mix. It may not be the exact word that everybody used, but you can guess, I don't need to spend more than about a minute with you to understand this, that would be in the mix. So when you go out and say, hey, I'm about happiness, and what it means to me is creativity and those other things, people get it. They're like, oh yeah. Now you're not perfect at it, You may have to go, you got to apologize, you got to work better, you got to build up your purpose muscles. But that's who you are, and it's who you already are. And we know this because I could interview all those people.
Now I want to play back the tape, what you just said there. But you mean I could use that on my resume? Never mind.
Well,
I mean,
you have to.
I have to produce it. I have to be
you
it.
have to look to see. Well, what is it about? What skills do you have that create happiness for people and you're really good at? Because in these days, you got to be really good at something. But when you focus on what it is that you create naturally through who you are, and then a skill that allows you to do that, like my purpose work is a skill. It's a system that I've developed over time, and it allows me to help people see the greatness in themselves. So this was not meant to be a coaching sort of thing, but going back to our country, life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all, we have to get that that's a really great thing. I think it might be unique. I don't know, but I don't know if there's too many other Declaration of Independences in the world, and I have to do that.
We were the first, republic on the planet that was designed of the people, for the people, by the people concept.
Right.
It's pretty powerful. I feel like its days aren't over. I hope. I feel it's got an awful lot of power, waiting for the fire to build up again.
Well, again, it's already there.
Yeah.
It's there. People just. Look, you're like you said, you're about happiness. There's just places where you can be in and where you can't.
Right.
You're bumping up against the limit.
That's right.
Our country is bumping up against a lot of limits in terms of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all. But that's who we are. That's what actually makes us great. If we want to be great ever again, we have to own that and really see where it's happening, where it's not. If we don't, we're going someplace else.
We can do it, humans. I mean, we can. I mean, I have this. I think your thing about greatness is that everybody's got it in them, and it's, I guess various levels of uniqueness, but not really being tapped. I think it goes back to Caroline Kennedy's father, and I think if sometimes, and that's delving too deep into the past and the politics and whatever, but it's that flame lives on anyways.
It absolutely does, and it's there through communication. You go, everybody watches this. Go talk to 5 people about life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness for all. Just see what happens. See what connections you can get. Ask people what helps them experience more of that. What helps them help others experience more of that, and what gets in the way. Where do you feel stuck?
And look at those 3 words again too. All right, life. To me, there's my big circle of biological life. With the water cycle and the air and the whole planet is basically, if nature was left alone by human beings, it's what do they call those machines that never die, that are that's like the holy grail of energy.
Right.
That's what nature does.
Yep.
It feeds itself. So there's life. Liberty is very important too, isn't it? I mean, it's huge. I mean, we have to trust in liberty. We really have to trust in each other again.
It's one of those words I actually don't. I'm working on what it means to me. I haven't come up with a good. It's a freedom. I look at it more as like freedom, because that's a word that I use.
Yeah.
I don't use liberty very much.
Yeah.
It's an interesting conversation, and this is where I would much rather talk to people who actually have more opinions about that word and understand more and try to develop my own understanding of it. But it comes. But the one part about liberty is that you only need liberty because you're involved with other people, right? If you're by yourself, you don't need liberty's already there, right? So the idea of liberty really and the importance of figuring out ways to maintain liberty only shows up
constrained by some
in
external
some sort
force.
So you have to be able to communicate with people about what liberty is, because you're only going to need it when you're with people.
And responsibility seems to go hand in hand with liberty. Liberty gives you a sense of like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
All right, or you're free. Well, what do you? I mean, is there some kind of responsibility there?
Yeah, well, again, it's
Totally.
to me, it's we the people, you and I are the we. We live like that document's old. It's an everyday. You wake up every day. We declare we the people, and if we live that way, I think something cool would happen. But it takes a little work to do that.
I think good things are still alive and well afoot on this planet. We're just
It's possible, but I want to be very clear. Like we can have this little conversation because we live here in Marin. It's beautiful. It's for the most part pretty safe in all sorts of different ways. There's a lot of people who are suffering. Like we need to have this conversation fast. Like this is
the planet. I mean, it's a slender thread. Everything is a miracle every day at this point. But I think we have to have a sense of mission and engagement and believe that we're actually, this is what we're doing every day, all of us, somehow. I don't even know what that might even look like or what that would be, but to me, the planet, back off from, pumping gas and burning carbon, you or I, give 1 day a week at least, if we could, that we don't even turn the ignition on. We become a bicycle person. We have a, quote, day of rest or a day of have fun in your neighborhood and maybe meet somebody who thinks like you or whatever. This is, to me, we gotta like put together a whole new world again.
Yeah, well, can I just, this is me and my coaching. You're about you're about happiness. Like, look, it's happy. Let's create some happiness by knowing that my existence is helping rather than right now it kind of feels like I'm hurting the world. And you have that sense of accomplishments that you get by being a part of a solution that actually works. That's happiness for you, right? Like and so you just frame everything and you just own the blank out of happiness, and see what it creates, because that's who you are.
I know, but it doesn't seem like it sometimes at all. Period.
Happiness is not about perfection. Purpose is not about perfection. I know it stumbles, but it doesn't matter. It's still who you are.
Joey Chandler,
Thank
this
you
has
very
been
much.
a great conversation.
This was fun.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Just
much.
what I needed.
Perfect.
All right, cheers.
Yeah.
Okay.